Okay, so this is Mark, and tonight's show we have a special guest on, and his name is Marq Evans, and it's Marq, not just with a C or a K, which is kind of interesting. And he's a director of films. And let me see here. So I was checking out his biography, and he wrapped up a recent documentary called "The Glamour and the Squalor" about Seattle's music and one of their DJs. And according to what I've read, he came across an article on Princeonomics, which is a website that had an article about how Will Vinton lost his studio. And from there, after 2015, he started to contact Will and get involved in making an actual feature film about Will Vinton's life. So tonight I'm going to give him a call and see what he can tell us about his Kickstarter campaign. So let's see what happens here.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Good. So you must have pre-recorded the video because I was watching it live, didn't know if I should talk or not.
Yep, I started a little bit early there. Glad to have you on, though. It sounds like I can hear you fine and clear.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, so your project seems really super exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe how you got started, maybe in films, and how it led up to this particular project?
Yeah, getting started with films, really, I've got to give my older stepbrother credit. He had been in LA making movies for about 10 years. He had a film called Americano with Dennis Hopper and Joshua Jackson, and really was just paving the way a little bit. And I, at the time, was in a like a sales management job in Salt Lake City that I didn't love, wasn't creating, which is really what I wanted to do. And ultimately, we finally came together in 2010. His dad, my stepdad, who I'd grown up with, passed away, and the next day was the big earthquake in Haiti. And we decided just to go out to Haiti and kind of start documenting some things going on out there. So that was really kind of my film school, was going out there working on a documentary in Haiti that we're still working on. We're finishing up probably this year. I'm producing, he's directing. So that was my film school. And then I made the movie The Glamour and the Squalor, which released last year. And as I was finishing that, it is where I came across, I saw you mentioned the Priceonomics article. There's a website that I go to quite a bit, probably every day, called theworldsbestever.com. And that's where I found that article. And it was a great read, and I had grown up with Will's work and his characters, and the Raisins and the Christmas special, which I still watch today. I've got a 7-year-old kid, and we watch it every year. So that it just, the nostalgia of that, it took me back. And then Will's got a pretty great story. He's got he's a guy that started a company out of his basement and grew it into a $40 million a year company and created all these iconic characters. And unfortunately, there's a cautionary tale there too, as it came crashing down. I don't want to give too much of the story away for people that don't know it, but it's a really incredible story for a lot of different reasons. So I'm super excited to tell it.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember following the whole drama on the internet when it was going bad at the time for Will himself. And there were a lot of emotions, a lot of people who were fans of his and whatnot. So, I mean, I don't know how much you want to give away, but it is a really interesting story, and it's both sort of sad and, I mean, yeah, mostly sad,
Yeah, it is and it isn't, because, and that's kind of my job also, to not, leave the viewers coming away like, oh man, that was a sad story. Really, at the end of the day, to me, it's an inspiring story. I work out of my garage. He started in his basement, and to do what he did, I mean, he's definitely a success story, and he's got this legacy of these characters, and probably his biggest legacy is the people that started their careers at Will Vinton Studios and went on to do amazing things. Whether it's Craig Bartlett, who worked on the Raisins and the Noid, and then went and started his own studio and created Hey Arnold, Dinosaur Train, and he's got his newest show, Ready, Jet, Go, or Joan Gratz, who went on to win Oscars of her own, and then even I just got an email yesterday actually from Angus MacLean, who did he co-directed Finding Dory, and he emailed while my son and I were watching Toy Story of Terror. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a Halloween short for Toy Story. He directed that. He started at Will Vinton Studios, so it's just really amazing to see the family tree. So I mean, it's most success story, but it's got some drama, whether it's what happened with the company or his relationship with his partner Bob Gardner, which we get into in the story. There's a lot of things. When I kind of uncovered this, I thought, wow, this is a movie right here. It's not. If it wasn't, it probably wouldn't interest me enough to take a couple years to devote. But there's a lot there, and I think people are going to be a little bit surprised with how interesting the story is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the art that Will Vinton Studios created, the animation, the characters, and all of that, were just so unique, in the world of animation, and they really got to a point where they streamlined, for lack of a better term, the process where everything was really polished. They were really one of the best studios doing stop motion in America. Outside of like Phil Tippett, and you have like Ray Harryhausen and all those kind of people, but for that particular style, the cartoon style, it's really awesome. I always wanted to work there as a kid. I don't know about you, if you were inspired to like get in the studio and everything, and but that was sort of my dream. And so seeing this film, I think, is gonna be really fun for me to watch personally. But what do you think is the takeaway for people that watch this for the first time when it comes out? Like, what do you think is your main sort of goal to tell? Like, what part of the story is this more like a human story, or?
I mean, it's definitely a human interest story, and Will as a person, but it's going to attract, I would hope, fans of claymation, stop motion, animation in general, and fans of his work and the characters. But ultimately, I think it's a story of a creative entrepreneur, and at least for me, like, that's something that I can relate with. And a lot of creatives can, especially this day and age, when you make something and then you make it, it's like, okay, now how do I get it out into the world? There's all these other things that go along with creating, and I don't know if I've seen a lot of films about the creative entrepreneur, and that's really what Will is. And one thing that we're doing in this film is we're creating these two new original claymation style characters that live inside of Will's head. So basically, 9 times throughout the movie, there's 9 scenes. And so sometimes we go into Will's head during archive while he's 41 years old and the Raisins are going crazy, and we have this great archive. We go into his head there and we meet these characters. Other times it's Will now, who's about to turn 70, and we go and see them. But it's his left brain and his right brain. We call them Lodge and Randy. So Lodge being like logical and Randy being random. 2 times. So we've written, and we'll be casting for these characters, and so we've written the dialogue and written these scenes, but it's that balance of your left brain and your right brain, that creative entrepreneur trying to create the art but also make a business out of it. And so for me, because that I can relate to that, like I said. So that's where it's really exciting for me, and I think there's a lot of people that probably haven't seen a movie like this that are creators, but it also has that other side to it.
Absolutely. And a lot of people that are starting out in stop motion always kind of ask the common question of, how do you start a studio and what's involved? And the dealing with the other people is a huge part of it. And not a lot of people understand that it takes a lot of social skills to get along with a team and create a team, and to stop infighting. And there's just a whole like world of things going on that people never really think about. They think of like puppets and sets and software and cameras,
And that, I think, Will's biggest strength was probably as a producer. He was a sculptor, he was an animator, he could do those things and did a lot of that on their early projects. but he was really great at putting things together, building teams, inspiring teams, making deals. So he's really a good example of that kind of that left brain, right brain hybrid, which is where this idea came from. And then you got somebody, unfortunately, like Bob Gardner, who was his partner on Closed Mondays, which won the Oscar in 1974. Just an amazing short film. Bob was a creative genius, but he was probably more of this right brain personality, and couldn't necessarily put things together, and didn't have a career after Closed Mondays really because of that reason. So there's a lot that goes to it outside of just the creating side of it.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of stories, which I won't give away because I know them myself. I've talked to a lot of people at the studio, but yeah, it's a colorful story for sure.
There's been some interesting stories. Some of the names again, the people that I've interviewed, like Hal Hickel, who's now at ILM and doing Star Wars stuff, and all these guys have just amazing stories of not just the Bob Gardner days, of course, but just the studio in general and Will.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of secondary people that, animators and such that are not very well known. Hal Hickel's pretty popular, but
sure.
Like John Ashley Pratt, for example, I got to meet him, and that guy is like a brilliant animator but he's very quiet and reserved and not really out there.
So I know of a John Ashley who's married to Melissa Mitchell. Is that the same John Ashley Pratt?
Let me see here. Is he from Mexico?
I'm not totally sure.
Not sure. I've got a picture of him. I can show you. Let me see here.
All right.
Since we're online and it's live, why not, right?
Yeah.
Let's see here. But yeah, he was like a genius with cameras and lighting, and he's been at the studio for so many years.
There's just so much amazing talent that came through that studio, and it's unreal, really.
Yeah. So did you ever get to take a tour of the studio when they were actually working on projects or anything, or did you get to go?
No. I came into this. I was a fan of Will's work, the studio's work, as a kid, and that was kind of it until a couple of years ago, seeing the story and being reminded of it. Like it wasn't necessarily like I'm not. I love animated films and I'm a big fan, but I hadn't. It really wasn't on my radar. And then I read the story while I was looking for my next film. Yeah, I think that's probably the same John there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but and it was just as a documentarian looking for my next film where I thought this was really interesting. So no, I haven't, and I haven't. Actually, Leica has a brand new. I think just last Friday they museum in downtown Portland opened up a new exhibit about Leica, and actually Will got to go the day before to check that out. Of course, he was curious about it. And I have not seen it yet. I live in San Diego, but have been obviously in and out of Portland quite a bit during the making of this project. So I'll be back soon and looking forward to seeing that exhibit. But no, I didn't have a chance to ever go to the studio while they were cranking.
Sure. Well, it'd be nice if you could. Just seeing stop motion sets set up for animating and having all the lights and everything, it's so much fun to see what people put together. And a lot of people that worked for Will are still there at Leica.
Yeah.
A lot of new talent as well. So does this pretty much focus on people that worked at the studio during the 90s, or did you have a certain...
It's all really, the film is about Will Vinton. That's kind of my thing, is the biographical story that's entertaining about somebody that did a lot that maybe the masses weren't totally aware of. Like, I think the masses know of his characters and his work, but maybe not the name Will Vinton. Certain people that are in the know of claymation and stop motion and animation know the name Will Vinton, but outside of that, maybe they don't.
Yeah, so, sure.
So that's kind of my thing. Is my last film was about a radio DJ that was super popular in Seattle. He was one of the biggest radio DJs in the world. But outside of Seattle, or outside of the music industry, people didn't know his name because it was 1991 in Seattle. There was no internet. So I was able to tell his story about the guy that wrote all this music. into the world. And I see some similarities between that and Will's story and getting out in the world. So yeah, it's really centered about Will and his arc. You know, when you think I always try to make a film, even if it's a documentary. Like, what if I was writing this story? How would I tell it? So it's really about his story and his arc. But certainly, there's a lot of these major players from the studio's history that are a part of it, and even outside of the history. You know, Peter Lord from Aardman gave a great interview. I interviewed him last year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, super great guy. Like, had a really good time with him. And you know, he's got a point of view to talk about Will and the studio because they were competitors, but also friendly. You know, they would share animators for projects. And the funny thing about them is for 10, 15 years in the 70s into the 80s, they were basically on parallel lines, but they didn't even know it. Because of the time that it was. There was no internet. It was hard to connect. And
that's right.
They were like the two studios in the whole world that were doing it at that high of a level. And then finally they realized, wow, there's somebody else doing this as well. So they became friendly then. So it goes beyond just people that worked there, but it's definitely, the story is definitely centered on
cool.
The whole story.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Without the internet, it's like most of the films from Aardman, you know, were unknown until I think Nick Park made like Grand Day Out and Wrong Trousers. You know, those were huge hits in America, and I think before that, Aardman was really not known at all anywhere. You know, besides the UK.
Yeah, it was cool interviewing Pete Lord. He attested to that. He was kind of like, you know, from an ego standpoint, he's like, it was kind of weird. Like, we've got this guy all of a sudden that is just a genius, and then I had to kind of tell myself, wow, I'm great because I hired this genius of Nick Park, and that's really what took them to the next level. And he, I think, you know, is happy to shout that from the rooftop. And Nick Park was just, you know, them finding him and connecting with him. It was the perfect storm, man. That guy is just absolutely a genius and took them to the next level.
That's cool. Now, you know, there's actually a studio in South Korea that's making claymation, like skits for TV.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about it, but you might want to ask Will, because I know he went out there to South Korea, and
he's done some classes out there.
Yeah, he's got some huge fans of his work out there, and some of them who are sort of, you know, picking up where he left off in a sense with that claymation style where. Like, it's like a cartoon character where the lips move and all of that. Some really amazing work.
He mentioned, like, he went out there, and the first time they sat him down in a conference room and started just playing a bunch of his films frame by frame, and just and just, like, you know, drilling him on, like, the process of it. And it's a good point. I definitely need to see some of this work that's being done out of there, and maybe we should even be working with some of those people for our project as well too, with the originals.
Yeah, I mean, because it's sort of kind of interesting how he's made this impression on other people, and you know, because if your story is more on the human level, just you know, seeing what has been done after he was where he was in terms of clay would be really kind of fun.
Yeah. Sure.
So what can you tell us about Will and his character? Like, he's very entrepreneurial. Is he still entrepreneurial to this day?
Yeah, very, very much so. And he's still working on projects. He's got probably the project that he's most passionate about is called The Kiss, and it's a like live action play that he's developing and hoping to take it to Broadway. So it's something totally different than what he's done in the past, but it kind of combines, you know, he grew up going to plays with his family. And that's really, like, his dad especially, that's what they did. They went to these plays. So it's a combination of just that background of going to plays with his family and his style of animation and creating characters and humor and music. And it's really, what I've seen is really awesome. They did a show last year in Portland, just kind of like a test show, and I've got footage of that. It was really cool. So he's spending a lot of time working on that, and he's attached to direct a few animated films, one out of China, one out of India, I believe, as well too. but he's just somebody that like he's got his whole life he's had that creative bug and he wants to create and put things out into the world. And as far as just him in general, I always have a great time around him. He's just a normal person. There's no ego there. He's not hard to be around at all. I've worked with people in the past that have been a little bit challenging just to get along with,
Mm-hmm.
and he is just so not that. Like he's just very normal and grounded and just fun to be around.
That's awesome. And I guess kind of in a way you would almost need to be in order to work with others. Like I said before, a large studio. I think how many people at the height of his studio did he have employed? I think it was like
About,
maybe 300
about
plus.
yeah, about 400 when they had the PJs and Gary and Mike going at the same time. There's about 400 people there.
Wow, that's a lot.
Especially, and this would have been early 2000s.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 01, 02. And then 03 is when things started kind of going sideways on them. But both of those shows got lost essentially. There was the 01, the terrorist attack in 01 changed the advertising industry, so they lost some of the commercials, and then both of those. It was kind of the perfect storm. Both of those shows got canceled. PJ's ended up having kind of a second life, but Gary and Mike got canceled. And
Oh, no
yeah,
kidding. So
yeah,
2001 actually impacted advertising and all of that. I didn't realize that. Um,
yeah. There was just a lot less. I mean, nobody was going to take a risk, so there was just a lot less money spent. So really, the commercial department carried the studio for a long time from a financial standpoint. I mean, they did so well off these commercials. When you think about the Raisins and the Noid, I mean, these are characters people remember 30 years later, but they started out as ads, which kind of goes back to that left brain, right brain thing for me, which is why we created these characters, is the art versus commerce. And an ad, they made great art for ads to sell products, and they ended up having a life beyond that, of course.
sure. Yeah, there was a recent Domino's Pizza commercial I saw where they used the Noid in one of their commercials, but it was just a stuffed animal. And I
Oh, was
thought,
it? Yeah, I noticed that they should get back to using the real ones.
I know.
It's funny because I've seen some reoccurrences of some of these characters. I think the show The Goldbergs, which I believe is on ABC.
Yeah.
I may be wrong with that, but we watched that, and there was a Raisins reference last year, I believe. It's funny how some of these characters, 30 years later, kind of come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so amazing what they did in clay, and then they just use like a stuffed animal, which is so boring. Um,
Yeah, that's funny.
now, do you know who Tony Marathu is?
So Tony is actually not the main, the designer right now. Him and I are working together on these original characters.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. Okay, because I was gonna say he did a lot of the Noid characters, like sculpting
Yeah,
them
yeah.
and all of that.
He sculpted Raisin. So this is nobody else knows this, but you now and your audience is the characters that we're developing right now. We're actually using original Raisin's hands and original Noid eyes for these characters, and then the clay is from 1986. You can't still get it; it's not on the market anymore, but he's got a ton left over. So that's the clay that we're using. So, really, what we wanted to do is we wanted to pay as much respect as possible to the Vinton studio style and characters and everything, and still make them our own and make them more modern, but by having some of the the eyes and the hands and the clay even.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. So Tony, he started with some sketches, and for the past couple of weeks, we've been doing just a lot of back and forth. And if this was on video, I would give you guys a quick little sneak peek. Nobody's seen them yet, and they're still not done. But it's exciting. The characters are looking really cool, and Tony is just amazing.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, Tony has a ton of I think it's called Avalon clay.
Yep, that's what it is. Yep.
Yeah, because I've bought some from him for myself because I mean that clay, the older it gets, the better it gets. So if you want to do animation, that's sort of like the secret behind it. But yeah, that's really super exciting. And so, do you go into perhaps how you make the armatures? Is he using sort of like a lead wire brass tubing armature, or is it going to be more? maybe modernized, less toxic? No lead
You know,
or.
that's a good question. We have not had that conversation. But yeah, it's a good question. I imagine we should be using, doing a more modern type. That's not something that we necessarily need to do, 1986 style. But and I'm looking at our email right here, and it is the Avalon clay. It says, can't get any more. Factory's long gone from 1986. So
Sure, that's cool. Wow. So so let's see here. So here's an armature up on the screen. You can see the way they used to make armatures was with, lead wire and brass tubes, which they would solder together, and it's of course a little bit toxic. You really can't like file it with the file or sandpaper and whatnot, but that was really how they did the raisins and all the other characters back then. It's
yeah,
kind of interesting.
I was going to put something. I can find it here on. Maybe I can put it on the chat. But
Sure.
one of the and it's pretty basic, but one of the rewards, and it's at a high level, so it's a little bit out of reach for a lot of people, but we are doing custom claymation style characters for people that pledge a certain amount. It starts at $500
Cool.
to the campaign, but it does. There's this little article I wrote that just kind of shows our process with the armatures and everything. So I'm just gonna post that just because I just enjoy process. I can't find. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I'll post this here. I've got the Welcome to My Daydream account going here, so I just posted that to the chat.
Okay. Let me let's see here if I can bring it up. And okay. If you post it in Skype, I should hopefully be able to see it.
Put it on the YouTube chat.
Oh, you did? If I don't know if that will allow for links.
All right, let me. Oh boy. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to find how to do it on.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I'll just bring up a picture or two of. Let's see here. So I did get to go to the studio. Let me see here. Oh, I see it. I see it. Yeah, let me bring this up for you first here before I. Let's go here and. Here we go. So it says, "Get your custom claymation style figures."
So it's pretty visual. So you can, if you want to scroll through and just that's kind of the style that we're using to create these characters. And a few of them have sold for our crowdfunding campaign so far. But it's like I said, we had to start them at 500. There's 10 available at $500, and there's a cost, of course, to create them. That's me there, that character.
Awesome.
I wanted to make it as cheap as possible, but just with our cost of the actual goods and then the labor and everything. So you see the armature there and the sketches. And
that looks really cool.
Yeah, it's been fun to do it.
There's a close up.
Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, maybe walk us through your Kickstarter here. So it looks like you're about maybe almost halfway.
Getting there, yeah. So this is the second campaign like this that I've done for my films. My last film, The Glamour and the Squalor, we did a campaign back in 2014, and we raised $55,000 from 460 backers, I believe. And this one, the goal was a little bit less. And to be totally candid, from the time that campaign was done until about a year ago, I had thought I would probably never do a campaign like this again. And it was just, and it wasn't, and I think mostly it's because it was just a lot of work. And then I kind of had a realization that that's just not a smart way to think about it, because it's a great way to connect with fans, and gosh, this experience is more than the last one, has been really great, meeting people and hearing from people that were inspired by Will's work, and as an independent filmmaker, it's such a great resource to be able to try to get your ideas out into the world. And I realized like the complaint of just like, oh, I wish I had more of a budget, more financial backing. You can't make that excuse or have that complaint if you're not taking advantage of every opportunity that's out there. And Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Seed and Spark, there's a couple other ones out there. They're really great resources for a lot of different reasons. So for the past few months, we myself and then my producer Kevin Moyer, we developed this campaign, and but still, you just never know when you put something like this out there into the world. You try to do as much research as possible, and come up with ways to reach as many people as possible. But they're tough, and it's also scary because you put it out there into the world, and if it doesn't make it, then it's kind of a failure publicly. So,
Well,
so
I've seen people that have done Kickstarters and failed, and then they retool their wording and
yeah.
other things, and then they end up being huge successes. So you just never really know.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just don't know. So we're we did our best with the launch, and I feel good about it. I mean, like I was looking back to the last film that I made, and we were, I think, about halfway with like 3 or 4 days left, and I remember being a nervous wreck, but we hit it, and then looking back, I realized we probably could have raised quite a bit more. Like there's always a flood that comes those last couple of days for many different reasons. So yeah, I think we're doing okay so far. We have 22 days left. Yeah, we're at like 13,000, and got it up right here. 13,360 with 119 backers, and
That's great.
I'd love to get to 300 plus backers, and really the other, outside of the financial, which we would certainly put this to use and then some, is just the connecting with fans and people that are going to want to see the movie when it's done. And that to me is the other great thing about a campaign like this, is you just really you get to know a lot about your film and your audience when you do something like this.
Sure. So, will this be in film festivals, or how will people find it when it's completed? Just through your Kickstarter, or?
Yeah, most likely it'll do the festival run. I mean, God, things in the film industry and documentaries, it changes every single day, and a big part of that is just with the streaming giants, Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu, and other competitors coming up. Is that they're so competitive. They want original content. They want films. So anything can happen. We're already talking to a couple of those about pre-sales and things like that, and just keeping the options open. But most likely what'll happen is we'll go to the film festivals, and we'll go that route, and then it'll be available to watch on places where people are, I think, used to watching movies now, iTunes, and then Amazon, and hopefully Netflix and Hulu, things like that. So but really anything can happen. I mean, it's been interesting talking to some people that think that the story that we're telling could even have some sort of theatrical, it wouldn't be major, but in some markets, and so I'm optimistic about it. But it'll probably be, from now, we're probably a year or so out from finishing the film, which would put us at the early 2019 festivals, and then mid 2019 release.
I see. So what happens now? Do you have any like stretch goals if you were to, let's say, raise $1 million for this? Like, what do you do?
Well, Claymation would be epic, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, from a stretch goal standpoint, if we're fortunate enough to hit this goal and then exceed it, if you go down again towards the bottom and talk about risks and challenges, this money will allow us to complete all the interviews. I mean, there's interviews that have been committed, but so far it's all been self-funded. So I can't really go on too much further other than just nights and weekends type of thing, which is why I decided to start this campaign. Like we just need a little bit of money to be able to fund these next steps. So
that's a lot of plane tickets, I'm sure.
Well, exactly. Like Sean Lennon, Beatles baby, and Claymation fan wants to do an interview. I got to get out there to him, and we've traveled. We've done things like we went to New York and interviewed Bill Clinton, right? So, like, we've been able to do some of that, but 30 interviews, it's been a little bit draining. So this will help us get the rest of the interviews and the rough cut, and I'm hoping also potentially the storyboards of the original Claymation. and then that will be used to raise the final money, which would be probably from some sort of investor or film fund to complete the original claymation and actually finish the movie.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I mean, people probably don't realize what it takes to make a feature film. This is really a feature, right? I mean, this is not just a documentary.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a feature-length documentary, and really, I mean, the work that I like to do does blur those lines between documentary and feature narrative. But yeah, it'll be 80 or 90 minutes, and be been the genres of with the original claymation and documentary. We're even looking at casting somebody to play Will to match up with the archive footage that we have. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, I wish I had more archive. What do we do? Well, let's cast somebody that looks like Will, and let's shoot it the right way. It won't look like cheesy, crime TV show. It'll be cinematic, and so there's definitely some innovative things that we're planning on doing with the film. And really a lot of that is it's the funds that come into play to be able to afford it.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest challenge so far? I mean, you've been working on this for almost 2 years now. Is that right? Or
Probably about 2 years. Yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge it really does come back to financing. To be totally honest, it's like we've gotten as far as we have just because it's a fun project, and I have other projects that just from a paying the bill standpoint. I do videos for companies in San Diego, and I have a pop-up restaurant. I have things, that I do, but this is the passion project, and this is the thing that whenever I have my free time, I go to, and whenever I have extra money, I put into it. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at this point. Like, and that'll continue. That'll continue to happen. Like, this film at some point will be out there. But if we're successful with the Kickstarter campaign, and then that allows us to put together the rough cut and storyboards of the original claymation, then we're kind of home free, because then I've done this before, and I know from a process standpoint, that's where you can get other financiers really excited, because you're far enough along where they see that it's a real deal, and I can put the claymation characters and the brains on the table, and they can see them and touch them, and then things happen pretty quickly from there. So really, it's been a great process. I mean, I love working with Will. Meeting these people that we've interviewed have been, Peter Lords and Craig Bartlett's of the world has just been awesome and fun and inspiring. So it's really been just a great project, but you can't work on it full time when there's not funding.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can tell in the story. I mean, how many hours of footage have you taken? I think you said it was like you've got 15 interviews already you've done or so, or
about 30 interviews actually.
Wow.
30 different people, and we probably interviewed Will 3-4 times, which I'd say I'm done with interviewing Will until probably the very end, after we have a cut assembled, and then I'll look back and see, okay, we need a little more emotion out of Will in this scene or something like that. And I've learned like not to shoot any of the B-roll type scenes until we've got the story really cut and down. So that's the stuff we're starting to work on now, and we'll complete with this campaign, is having the rough cut of this story. And it'll look, if somebody were to see it, it would have like a lot of black gaps where we don't have the footage, and it's just somebody talking or whatever, and music behind it, but we don't see anything. Which is just part of my process to put together that way, to hear it and then start piecing together the footage afterwards.
Very cool. So now let me ask you, part of the story would be about Travis Knight and his father, the CEO of Nike at the time. Are they going to be in your film?
Yeah, so that's a good picture you've got up there. Is that from the Oregonian? Is that what it says?
Yes.
That's it's a color version though. So I've got the actual newspaper. You might need to send me that picture. That's a good one.
Yeah, sure. If you want me to.
Color. We are some people on our team have been in touch with some people on Travis's team about doing an interview. So I'm optimistic that'll happen, and then maybe from there we'll be able to get Phil, who's notoriously somebody that doesn't like to go on camera for interviews. So we'll see what happens there. Optimistic about Travis, but we do have I did just get some really uh, interesting footage from Will the last time I was there, kind of about that whole thing that went down. So it's kind of game changing footage, to be honest, as far as the film goes.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Wow, this
so
is like sounding really interesting now.
there will be some representation there, but I'm hoping to be able to sit down with both of them.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing would be to have both sides. That's always my rule of thumb when trying to get to the bottom of things, or if you're wondering what happened.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's always
And then
fair.
you let an audience, and then try to be as objective as possible, and an audience can make their own opinion. And my favorite stories and films, that there's nuance there. It's not just the author or the creator or the director or whatever is trying to say, like, here's the point of view and you have to do this. It's kind of tell both sides in an interesting way, and then let the audience come up with their own impression.
Yeah, that's a great way to be. Now, one of the things that I like to ask you, if do you know anything about the attic that was at the original studio and all the puppets that were in there, the archive?
I've heard things about that, and that after everything went down with the transition, that they went to certain places, and then I've heard people say that they saw them in a dumpster one day, but then I've heard people since then say that it still exists somewhere at, like, a House Special. So I have not gotten down to the total bottom of that. Maybe you know what's going on with all those characters.
Well, that's why I asked you. I'm not really sure. I've heard
No,
the same rumors.
it's one of those things, like nobody that I've talked to knows the answer. Somebody knows, and it's probably, clearly it's somebody that I haven't talked to yet, probably.
Yeah. I mean,
That
I
may,
hope that
and
somebody has.
it's probably people that you just mentioned a minute ago know the answers. But yeah, there's really a legacy there that I hope it still exists. It would be horrible if it doesn't.
Same here, yeah. I mean, I remember way back in like maybe 2005 or so. Just kind of guessing roughly here, but I know Aardman had a giant warehouse full of preserved puppets, and there was a giant fire, and they lost. I think it was right after Chicken Run. They
Oh,
lost a whole bunch of their history in one fire, and of course, clay does not hold up very well to 1,000 degrees.
and
you know.
when I interviewed Webster Calkert, um, he's in the Bay Area in Richmond, and actually at the time he was, maybe he still is, but he was working out of a couple of shipping containers, and he had just finished. Did you see the music video he did? There was a claymation component with Michael Jackson and his monkey for Sean Lennon and Les Claypool. See that
Yep.
video?
Uh-huh. I've seen it.
Yeah, he had just finished that. He was working on something else, and and it was pretty hot when we were interviewing him. It must have been this past summer, and clay is just like melting all around, just dropping on the floor. So
Oh no.
it does not withstand heats. I mean, it was hot in there, but it wasn't fire hot.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I talked to him on a live show when we would actually discuss those containers. And he was telling me that a lot of people will take them and they'll put in doors and windows and turn them into like a house for, you know,
Yeah,
almost nothing.
yeah, that's a cool shot there.
Yeah, I've got a ton of photos that
Yeah,
I've taken and people have sent me over the years. This is, I guess, probably from um, maybe 1987 or so.
the
Um,
Chuck Duke on the far left, I believe, right?
Yep, Chuck Duke, and I think that's, let's see, this is Kyle Bell, um,
I
Vince
interviewed.
Vince Backenberg,
Yeah,
Gary Bialke is here. Um, is that Bill Feisterman? I don't know if that is.
I was thinking so, in the sweater, maybe.
Yeah, I think that might be
Yeah,
him.
I think that's Bill. Bill was also great at interview. Really good.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the people that work there, so talented, and I mean, uh, it's gonna be really fun to see your interviews and get their take on things. Like you say, it was really Vinton Studios was a springboard for so many artists who are doing things today that, um, I mean, people really owe a lot of thanks to what he's done, and hopefully, hopefully he'll do some more work here. That we can see once again. in the near future.
That's my. I mean, I would love for the final kind of scene in the film to be, I don't want to call it like last draw, but something new where he's made a comeback and put something out in the world that people really respond to. That would be the best ending, obviously. And he's got a few projects going on that could do that. And I certainly wouldn't bet against him. Somebody that could have the kind of success he did. You don't bet against those people. So that's what I'm hoping for. It'd be a great ending for the film.
Yeah, it really would. Yeah, I mean, I really wish him the best, and I mean, a lot of people that are, I'm in my 40s now, so, growing up with this stuff, I've always wanted to see more of it. The claymation work that he did is not really done so much anymore. Of course, like I said, in South Korea, they still do it, and Aardman kind of still does it, but they're leaning more towards, silicone and 3D printing, which is a bit of a different sort of process and everything. It's not really bad or anything, but it's just different, So I guess let's see here. We got about 10 more minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to add to our conversation about where people can go to find out more about you, or maybe your web pages? What are your websites, actually?
Good question. About what my websites are. I haven't really looked at it for a while, but it's marqevans.com, MARQEVANS.com, and it needs some TLC. I have not really paid much attention to it. So,
okay.
And then on Twitter, which I always tell myself I want to be more active. It's Marq_Evans, I believe. And then we have this campaign going, which I don't know if you can link up to that, the Kickstarter campaign that, I'd love for people to check it out. If you have the means to make a pledge, that would be amazing. If not, if you could share it with people that you might think would be interested in it, that would be incredible. Really still just trying to spread the word about it and make people aware that this project exists and that and the campaign exists and what we're doing. So I think once people discover it, they're pretty excited about it and interested in it. So the more that people can share it, the better.
Okay. Well, how about this? Let me play the video on your Kickstarter so people can see what you've done, which I probably should have done at the start, but let's do that now and see. Let me see. I'll turn off the chat so we can see the video as well. Okay, so let's play it.
Hi friends, my name is Marq Evans and I'm the director of a new documentary called Welcome to My Daydream about the father of claymation, Will Vinton. Will and his studio created some of the most memorable characters of the 80s and 90s, characters I grew up with. The California Raisins, Domino's Pizza's Noid, Dinosaurs Herb and Rex, the PJs, the list goes on. Will has granted us exclusive access to make this film. We've already collected hard drives full of never-before-seen archives and behind-the-scenes footage, and interviewed not only Will several times, but also 27 additional subjects for the film. Take a look at the demo that we've created, and then stick around on the other side to learn more about the campaign.
Will Vinton has been bringing clay to life for more than 15 years, but nothing before has attracted attention like the California Raisins.
It just hit that cultural nerve when people became aware of this process of claymation, and they wanted to be part of it.
Michael, we should do you as California Raisin. Yeah!
Will wanted us to feel like you were in his clay world.
Yeah!
Furniture was made out of clay, the walls were clay, the pictures on the wall were clay.
You would not believe what it felt like to walk through that place. It was like magic.
The studio was all over the media at the time. It was the shit.
We were rebels, we were in Portland, we were doing stop motion. We didn't have big money behind us. It was just like the little studio that could.
He really wanted to be the next Walt Disney.
And it looked as if maybe that were happening.
The winner is Closed Mondays, Will Vinton and Bob Gardner.
Together they were a perfect team. They really hit gold.
This is fantastic.
He just all of a sudden got to be super big and the animation icon.
We really scaled it up. 35 million revenue, 400 people.
I'm impressed.
Will's enthusiasm was the company's greatest asset and probably the greatest danger.
When people give you a lot of money, there are expectations. They get to call a lot of shots.
Thank you for turning me on.
Will started with just clay and a camera, and it just got out of hand.
It wouldn't be uncommon to get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it's Bob Gardner railing about Will.
He threatened to assassinate Will Vinton at the Rose Festival Parade.
Things had gotten so strange there. By the time they were doing the PJs and Gary and Mike, I would say it was a completely different company.
Then the shows got canceled, and he was stuck with this big debt.
Kicked to the curb of his own company? How could he build all this up and then it gets taken away?
For him to lose his company and then not be able to use his name was just like horrifying.
It was just of a particular time, this beautiful little spot, and the people who got to be part of it were lucky to be part of it.
Everything I've done is a build, is something that I've built one thing on top of the other, and the next thing I do is informed by all of those other things. I love being able to feel like my life is a continuum, that things that may have felt like they might have been missteps was not at all a misstep.
We're proud of what we've accomplished so far and are confident we have a really strong film on our hands. But there's still a long ways to go. That's why we're turning to you, hoping that you'll join the team and help us get to the finish line. We're offering some really great rewards, everything from owning the film before it's available to the public, to signed photos and posters, to our t-shirt, even our own Welcome to My Daydream mustache wax. One reward we're most excited about is the opportunity to have yourself or someone you love turned into a claymation-style figure like this one of me. We'll even put it into the movie if you'd like. So please join us in making the feature documentary about the father of claymation, Will Vinton. Thank you so much for your support.
That was great.
Oh, thank you.
That was really awesome. I really hope that you succeed, and you know, just for you know, your sake and for Will's as well, to get his story out there, and you know, it's an exciting story. Looks like let me see here. Where's my chat? Let me see if there's any questions from our chat.
Yeah, sure.
So Randy Boyum says, love the tagline. And he also says, I'd love to see Will do something new. Is he actually working on something? Which I think, did you say that it was, he's working on The Kiss right now?
Yeah, The Kiss is the big thing that he's been working on, that he created. There's a couple projects that he's attached to direct, but there's moving parts to those. They're not his stories or creations. But The Kiss has really been his passion for the last couple of years. So it's a play that he, you know, the ultimate goal would be to take to Broadway, and he's created with David Pomeranz, you know, Grammy Award-winning musician, and it's really, what I've seen and heard, really great. But you know, like anything, especially something like that, man, that's got to be tough to try to do a play. But it's really bringing together a lot of his lifetime of not just work but also influences. He went to plays as a kid with his parents. That was their big thing, is they would go to plays and go to musicals. And so this is very much that. It's a musical and it's comedy and it's character driven. So it's really cool, but it's a lot of work, and that's what that's his big passion project that he's been working on pretty much ever since I met him.
Very cool. Yeah, I know he I believe had a Kickstarter for that about 2 years ago, maybe, or so. And I wasn't sure how that turned out because I hadn't heard much of it or much about it since. But so it's still actually in the works, which is nice to hear.
Yeah. So I saw him just a few days ago, and we were talking about it, and he's been recently talking to some other producers that potentially would actually produce the play. So, you know, he'd be on as the creator and the producer, but maybe not be the one that is active with it in New York. And there was somebody out of all the people that he had talked to that were probably the most excited and the most influential about making it happen and running with it was Harvey Weinstein. And obviously that's not going to happen anymore.
I see. Well, hopefully it works out for him. And I mean, Broadway plays, interestingly enough, they actually tour America, which I didn't realize until recently when my wife wanted to watch a Broadway play in Springfield, Missouri, where I live.
Right.
And I was like, are you sure that's a Broadway play or just like local actors in a school?
Yeah, they're touring. They're touring cast, and Yeah, great fun.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be pretty big if he gets it out there. You know.
Yeah, and there's, like anything, there's just so many different variables. So the script is good. Like I'm really excited about what he's doing, and of course I would love nothing more for him, but selfishly for the movie too. So
Cool. Now Randy Boyum says here that this film looks awesome and important, and he says if you need some behind-the-scenes pictures, there's a BTS video on his YouTube channel from Gary and Mike. I guess he worked on Gary and Mike for maybe a season.
Yeah, the behind the scenes type archive, like I can never have enough of that. So I will check that out. I don't know if he's got a link to it that I can take a look at, but any behind the scenes, I will be scouring and looking for that stuff until the day we lock the film. I mean, there's more the merrier. So that's great.
Awesome. Yeah. So anybody else, if anybody live. Oops, let me turn my volume
it seems
down.
like you've got a handful of pictures. We should talk offline too to see about maybe using, if you have any content that might be used in the film.
Sure. I've got a large collection I could send to you. Of course, it's up to Will if he allows you, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's been given access to everything, including a lot of his home collections. And like I said, the footage I got a couple of days ago, I was like, have you been holding out on me a little bit? Because this is pretty epic footage here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, one of my now the Kiss, I believe, was spawned from his a film which was never created called The Frog Prince, which is what this picture is up here from. And some of the characters, I was lucky that I got to visit the studio when they were working on that, but it was never, of course, produced. But they had a wall of puppets, and it was so extremely inspiring for me. It's actually what inspired me to get into stop motion. Was their work. And Gary Bielke was one of the creators or designers of the characters. And let me see if I can bring up a picture here. Oh, Prince.
Gary, I believe, is not here anymore, correct?
Yeah, unfortunately Gary passed away. But you can see here from a VHS still some of the puppets he created, which were really cool to see, and to see them in person in full 3 dimensions is something that was, I mean, the characters almost came to life, but they weren't even moving. It's kind of hard to describe. So
there's a feel to them. It is hard to describe, but it just feels different. They feel real.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I love clay animation. Like I say, they don't really do it this way anymore, but to me, there's nothing better than a good clay character. So I can really understand why Will was so passionate about it. And anyway, let's see, we got about 2 more minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions for Mark tonight? Let me see here. So Tamaremi says, I can't wait to see this film and good luck. And Randy says that you can contact him through his channel, YouTube channel. And he says, got many dozens of photos from Gary and Mike.
Cool.
So that's cool. Yeah. So his channel is Randy Boyum Animations. And Randy's shared some animations he's done in the past under a show, which are absolutely hilarious. So you definitely need to check out his Randy, what is the name of your animation where the guy goes through the drive-through that we've watched about 100 times on the show?
Is it Fast Food?
Is that what it's called? I'm not on his channel right now. It might be called that, but man, it is so funny. You'll die laughing.
It looks great. I see Fast Food here. I'll check it out. I'm on his page, so yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. Well, anyway, Mark, thanks again for coming on, and anybody who wants to see more of Mark's work, check out his Kickstarter, and it's called the project is called Welcome to My Daydream, a documentary about Will Vinton, and they're also on Facebook. You can find them on Welcome to My Daydream. Just do a search for that. You can also check our video here, and below in the description, if you click the Show More button down at the bottom, So here we are. So there's a, let me see here. So if you click this show more, you'll see all the links will reveal themselves. So we got the Kickstarter and Facebook page right below. So it's really easy to find. I do hope that people will support you, and I guess maybe when you wrap up your film, if you want to come back on, Mark, feel free to send me a message, and we'll get together.
Yeah, I would love to. And Mark, thanks for your support of the project. I really appreciate it, and for everybody watching right now, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be bringing this film to you here not too far down the line.
All right. Thanks very much, Mark.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Thanks for stopping in to the live stop motion chat show. And if you guys, of course, have any questions or comments about anything, just leave them in the comments. See you later.